have, a body of a young boy that was tied to his parent, and they were both burned alive. I mean, how sadistic you have to be in order to burn a kid and his mother tied together to burn them alive, cutting the fingers of again young boy before killing him in front of his parents, after also demining his parents. Pregnant lady that they cut open her belly, and then they also shot the unborn baby. I mean, rape. We know that there was a lot of sexual violence, including with minors, that there were also the hostages that were taken. So this level of evil, of pure sadistic evil, and we think that the world should know that this is Hamas, that it's not, because people seems to be either confused or ignorant, or choose to be confused or ignorant, and to think that this has to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and with the Palestinian plea for. It's not. This is not about this, because Hamas is not working for the benefit of the people of Palestine, because of the Palestinian people, because Hamas is not about two-state solution. Hamas is about eliminating Israel.
I've seen many parallels drawn to the Holocaust, right? What do you think, how do you think Israel's history will remember this day?
I think it's a day that we will never forget. The scale of the attack and the nature of the attack, this is why I think that the first one who referred to what Hamas did as the new Nazis was not an Israeli, but actually is a German chancellor. The German chancellor, when he came to visit Israel, and he was taken to the site when he met the survivors, which is a term that we use to, that we are always referring mostly in the context of the Holocaust, he referred to them as a new Nazis after he saw what they did, because it wasn't just murdering and killing. It was butchering, it was slaughtering, it was sadistic, and people that took joy in this sadistic massacre that took place. And since the Holocaust, there hasn't been a day in our history that so many Jewish people died on the same day since the days of the Holocaust, and also because that some of the sin and the scenarios are ones that we only heard stories from the Holocaust period, and now it happened to us.
And Israel is answering to that day. And let me ask you, what's Israel's goal in its response? What does it want to achieve?
The goal of this war, the war that was forced upon us, we had no plans on finding ourselves in a war against Hamas. The purpose of the war is first and foremost to remove the threat. The understanding that we can no longer go back to living next to this brutal ISIS-like organization, and that the reality has to change, and we need to ensure that Hamas will no longer have the ability to govern Gaza and to possess this military terrorist threat to the people of Israel. In addition, to bring back home each and every one of our hostages, to bring them home safely. These are the two main goals of this war.
Let's still focus on the first goal first, to eradicate Hamas from Gaza. Let's assume that goal is achieved and Hamas is removed from Gaza. What happens next? Who comes in?
Good question. I think that this is a question that shouldn't only be put on the Israeli doorstep, but this is a question that involved also other countries in the region, as well as the Palestinian Authority. I mean, at the end of the day, Israel disengaged from the Gaza Strip in 2005. We left the Gaza Strip completely. There is not one Israeli soldier since 2005 inside the Gaza Strip, unless it was during specific limited military operation like the one we had in 2014. And when we left the Gaza Strip, this was a chance for the Palestinian Authority to start the process of state building, of statehood, because this is their aspiration. And what happened is Hamas first won the so-called election, and later on took force in a very brutal way, including by killing 160 Fatah people, Palestinian Authority people. And since 2007, Hamas is everything in the Gaza Strip. It's the only authority, it's the one in charge of all the civilian life, to the extent that they are actually existing, because we know that Hamas is stealing and abusing and actually diverting every resource that is coming into the strip into their own killing machine. This is not a solely Israeli problem. And I think that, for example, when we saw President Macron yesterday in Israel talking about forming a coalition, it shows that the world also understands that this is not just Israel and Hamas, but this is something much bigger and wider.
On to French president's proposal to form like anti-ISIS-like coalition in this case as well. What are the chances, do you think, of that happening?
I don't know. I mean, I think that this is a question not for us, but for the international community. But look, we're seeing a very impressive stream of world leaders that are coming one after the other to Israel. I mean, President Biden, of course, and State Secretary Blinken that has been hopping all over the region and came twice to Israel or even 3 times. The German Chancellor, the British Prime Minister, President Macron. I think that if I'm not mistaken, Trudeau, the Canadian Premier, should also be arriving to Israel. And a lot of our European friends has also visited Israel. And we wouldn't have seen it if it wasn't for the support. And I will say even more. Egypt tried to hold a conference last Saturday, an international conference, and this conference ended up without any result, without any agreement, because the Western countries refused to sign a paper that doesn't hold Hamas accountable for this terror attack and talks about Hamas being a terror organization. And I think that this tells a lot about the extent in which the world is united behind Israel, and also understanding that this is not a local, domestic issue.
Well, I have an impromptu question. Any idea whether the Russian president expressed willingness to come, or whether he's going to visit?
I'm not aware of his coming. I know that after 10 days he expressed his condolences. It took him 10 days and then he expressed condolences, but I'm not aware of any plans by him to come.
Okay. Let's go back to the Israel's response, and one of the bigger question marks that are still kind of staying in all this is the ground incursion happening or not? And why has it not happened so far?
It will happen when we will decide that this is the right time for it to happen. I know that there are many speculations. You know, naturally I cannot comment on anonymous resources, the sources that are talking with different media outlets. But at the end of the day, and I'm sure that you are following what the IDF Chief of Staff, General Alevi, is saying, and his official spokesman, we are ready. The army is well prepared for this. The decision has to be taken when we decide that this is the right time.
Can I pry a bit further?
Of course.
What when you say when the time is right, so how does one judge whether the time is right or not?
This is the job of the Chief of Staff of the IDF, together, of course, with the political. I mean, at the end of the day, the decision will be taken by the cabinet, by the Prime Minister and the cabinet members.
So to go on the full-blown ground incursion, and at whatever cost that might incur, make sure that Hamas is eradicated, that will also have costs, I think you'll agree.
Of course, every war has cost. Every war cost and cost on both sides. I mean,
what do you think the costs of that would be for each side in this case?
I think that the cost of it will be, of course, that more people will lose their life. I mean, I don't see how one can fight a war without ensuring that nobody will get hurt, because war is a very, very ugly affair. But I think that the question should be looked at from the other direction. What is the threat that Hamas is posing to Israel and to the Western societies as it continues to exist? The world cannot afford itself to continue living with Hamas after we saw what happened once the fence fell. We saw how little children were executed, brutalized, raped. Families were burned together alive. We cannot allow this threat to continue existing. So this is what we need to ask ourselves. What will be the cost if this will continue to exist, if you don't take an action?
And you already mentioned, Your Excellency, the civilian casualties also on the other side. And that, I think, has been the major concern of the international community. So let me ask you this. Any idea what's the death toll over there?
No, I don't know, and I will tell you why I don't know. I mean, I don't know because the source of information that everybody is quoting is the Ministry of Health of Gaza. What is the Ministry of Health? It's Hamas. The Ministry of Health of Gaza is Hamas. So I'm not saying that there aren't casualties on there. I want to be very clear. Of course that there are casualties, despite the fact that I'm doing everything that I can in order to prevent any harm to the non-involved population. Of course there are casualties, A, because war is, as I said, an ugly affair, and B, because Hamas is doing exactly the opposite. Because as much as I try to spare life of non-involved, Hamas has an interest to doing exactly the opposite. But I will say also that the numbers that are coming from Hamas, how can one take it as a reliable source of information from the same people that 2 weeks ago stopped at nothing in killing people? Let's talk about the hospital incident. This was one of the examples of exactly what we are seeing here. Hamas is coming out and accusing Israel of deliberately targeting hospital and that hundreds of people are now in critical condition or even dead. I'm not saying anything for 3 hours, 3 long hours. You are in the media, you know that 3 hours is like eternity. But I'm not saying anything because we want to verify. We know that we are not attacking hospital. This we can say immediately. But we want to make sure that what exactly happened and that it's not somehow affected by our war against military targets in the Gaza Strip. So after 3 hours, the IDF is coming out and not just saying it's not us, but also proving here we have the footage that we see Palestinian Islamic Jihad firing rockets to Israel, and one of them is falling on the hospital because they are doing it in the vicinity of the hospital, because they are hiding. They are using the hospital as the human shield.
War is an ugly business, you say, a cynical business, and I think discussing cynical business, sometimes we might be forced to ask cynical questions. Also, on that note, is there a tentative number of civilian deaths in Gaza at which point Israel might reconsider its war goals, or is it to the end no matter the cost?
I don't think that it works like this. I think that for many people to say, oh, the numbers are very high, and the numbers, and again, I'm not saying that the numbers are not high, but the question needs to be asked, how many of them are being sacrificed deliberately by Hamas, prevented from, because we have been saying for more than a week now, evacuate yourself down south. Everybody who's going to the south part of Gaza, this is a humanitarian zone. I
think you will agree, Ambassador, that there is a battle on the ground, but it has also another dimension. There is also a battle of going, especially if you look at the Western media, there is a battle going on for moral high ground here. And from that perspective, let's look at some of the, Palestinian counter-arguments, not necessarily Hamas. Let's look at the Palestinian arguments. And I think the gist of Palestinian argument is that Israel has also has to take some. The blame should be like, if not evenly, at least part of the blame should be distributed at Israel for the current situation. Not necessarily for the Hamas attack itself, but the situation in Gaza. For example, what do you think of that?
Let me ask you a question. What was President Mahmoud Abbas respond to the massacre that took place, to this brutal attack by Hamas? Have you heard him condemning it?
I don't think so, no.
Because he didn't, because he kept silence. This is a leadership. This is the leader, the elected leader really of the Palestinian population, the one who represents them, and he's unable to condemn killing of babies just because they are Israelis and Jews. And I think that everybody who is mixing it together is missing the point of what exactly took place here. Because there is a political debate between us and the Palestinian, and there is the discussion about occupation. And you have many people that are supporting the Palestinian aspiration to have an independent state, and it is okay. This is a debate that will continue to exist. But to justify the murdering of 1,400 people because of this, it's not to understand also the Hamas is not representing the Palestinian people. In Hamas charter, they are not aspiring to the two-state solution. Hamas charter is about eliminating the state of Israel. Hamas is supported by Iran. Iran is a country that is openly talking about the fact that this Zionist regime need to be eliminated. I mean, so everybody who believes that if we would have been in a scenario when there was some kind of a stronger Palestinian state is giving a easy pass to Hamas, because this is not the case at all. Hamas is about murdering as many Israelis and Jewish people as they can, and the fact that they don't hear anything from the Palestinian leadership, this is beyond disappointing.
I think the gist of their argument when it comes to that is that they claim it's, how do I put this? It's a reaction to the whatever they perceive as Israeli occupation, and that they refer to the universal truth
but I'm not occupying Gaza.
At some time will lash out.
But I am not occupying Gaza. I am not occupying Gaza. We used to say about Gaza that it could have been, Singapore. It could have evolved into something completely different. I am not occupying Gaza. I'm not in Gaza for 20 years. And Gaza, instead of flourishing as a first step of an independent state, turned into this, to a place where terrorism is being celebrated and dominating. So I think that, again, the discussion about the Palestinian state is a different discussion, because Gaza is not occupied. Gaza, for more than 20 years, is not occupied by Israel.
On this two-state solution that you already mentioned, I think it warrants a question whether it's dead or not. And how do you plan to coexist with Palestinians in the end?
It's an excellent question, because at the moment we have a trust deficit. Because, many of...
I don't think you have a deficit. I think there is no trust whatsoever.
How can I trust at the moment, as they just came into my house and murdered me in the most brutal way, and the representative the legit representative of the Palestinian people are keeping silence and are unable even to condemn it. So it's very difficult for me at the moment. But I want to say another thing, that, we never know. In 73, we fought this very difficult war, mostly against Egypt and Syria, and 6 years later, we signed a peace agreement with Egypt that still holds, and it's a very important one. So at the moment, I admit, it's hard to look beyond the present, but it doesn't mean that we might not have let me put it like, I haven't given up hope to live in a better world.
How can I trust somebody who is coming to my home to kill me? Absolutely excellent reasoning. Now let's look at from the Palestinian side, shall we? And whether their argument is valid or not.
I'm not coming to the home to kill them.
Absolutely.
I'm
not asking that. What I'm asking is the families of those civilian population who will perish during Israel's response. Who do you think they will blame? Will they blame Hamas? Will they blame Palestine? Will they blame Israel?
I understand that they will blame Israel. But I'm just saying that I'm obliged now to remove the threat that Hamas is posing. I think that there are a few brave people there that understand that they also aspire for Gaza to be freed from Hamas. When people are saying free Gaza, Gaza is being occupied by Hamas, not by Israel. I hope that those voices will come, bolder and bolder, but I think that at the end of the day, this is where leadership is needed. And if you have brave leadership that is coming and saying, okay, we have a chance to finish this bloody conflict, but it means that we have to denounce terrorism, that we have to come up and to say, no, what took place was not acceptable and much more, but this is not happening. I cannot really close the gap of what you are saying, that yes, this cycle of hatred, but I will say that I don't look at it as my responsibility. I think that there is a lot of Palestinian responsibility here.
I have done 3 or 4 interviews on Israel already, and there's one recurring question that I keep asking everybody I interviewed, and let me ask you this as well. This famous quote from Golda Meir, that peace will come to Arabs when they will love their children more than killing Jews. How far do you think we are removed from that day?
I'm sorry to say that after the bloody October 7th, I don't know what to tell you. But I am saying that if you're firing rockets on Israel from behind your own hospitals, if you're putting trucks to prevent your people from going down south, if you are sitting on a storage of 500,000 liters of fuel and you're not giving it to the generators, why does it need so much fuel? Does people know why does Hamas need so much fuel? Hamas built underneath Gaza spider webs of tunnels. And we're not talking about tunnels, like in cartoons when digged in some dirt and soil, but we're talking about well-cement tunnels, and this is where they're running the operation, and this whole killing machinery is being activated from there. And for this tunnels to exist, they need ventilation system, they need electricity, because it's all deep underneath the soil. So this is what they need the fuel for. They need the fuel in order to maintain their ability to continue killing Israelis and on the expense of their own people. So all this cry out that we need fuel, that the hospitals, you have the fuel. Your people need the fuel. This is what we are facing here with.
Since we're in Georgia and Russia casts such a large shadow here, let me ask you another follow-up question on Russia, and that would be the relationship with Hamas. What's your take on that?
Russia recognized Hamas as a political entity. For many, many years, we have this disagreement with Russia, and we keep on telling them Hamas is a terror organization. I will say that it is disappointing that even after
Why
October
do you think
7,
they don't believe you?
I don't think it's a matter of belief. I don't think that discussion with
That was
Russian...
a rhetorical question.
I don't think that discussion with Russian is based on belief. I think that I can only say that I think that anybody who is who still, after the attack that took place, is unable to designate, to call Hamas for what it is, to denounce it as a terror organization that it is, I would just say that this is a very disappointing reaction.
Israel
response.
usually, holds its grudges, I think it's fair to say, and disappointment does not easily go away when we talk about Israel. What impact do you think it will have on Tel Aviv and Moscow's relationship?
The Israeli public is very much interested in, how the world is see the event that took place, because of the scale of the tragedy and because of what happened to us, to my people.
Mm-hmm.
So people are, looking around to see. In the same way that when President Biden delivered a statement, that they really, I think that in most of the living rooms in Israel, people were on the verge of tears by this very family emotional addressing by President Biden. And on the opposite, I think that the Israeli public is also seeing who are the ones that, are not standing with us. And I think that, like in every country, public opinion
matters.
Yeah.
Would it be too speculative of me to ask you whether this will also have impact on Israel's take on the Ukraine war?
I think that I already answered this. on the Ukraine war,
I'm prying you for more specifics.
No, but one of the people that came out and still is and expressed an amazing solidarity is President Zelensky. I think that people first, again, doesn't know the truth, to what extent we are supporting Ukraine and the things that Israel has been doing for Ukraine. And second, the fact that Zelensky is among the first to come and to say, we are 100% with you.
Then was this incident when he was supposedly refused to,
I think that all of this, as far as I know, there is no...
That's not true.
That's not true.
I've run out of questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this. Thank you very much.
It was very pleasant to talk to you.